swear or affirm under the laws of the state of Utah, on penalty of perjury, that the testimony you give today will be true and correct, so help you God?
I do.
Thank you. Please have a seat. Mr. Facemire, I'll turn the witness back to you.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good morning, Kate.
Good morning.
Kate, we left yesterday speaking about your brother Kevin, and I wanted to go on to a different train of conversation now about how this case has proceeded. Previously, Kate, I had shown you a picture. Do you recall this picture?
I do.
And just because we're starting a new day, I'll just ask, what is this picture of? Do you remember?
The interview I had with the American Fork Police Department and the state.
Right. And do you recall the date of this interview?
Vaguely.
If I told you it says 6/12/2025, June 12th, does that sound right?
Yes, it does.
Yeah, okay. Not trying to trick you, but just to give an idea. So on June 12th, you went and met with the prosecutor and the investigating officer, right?
I did.
Your attorney was there, who's here today, right?
Yes, he is.
And in preparation for this, we had talked about, you had provided your attorney with a proffer of evidence, right?
Yes.
And as this proffer of evidence, that's your best recollection of the events leading up to the death of Matt, right?
Yes.
And in return for that proffer statement that your attorney drafted, you received an offer. Is that right?
Yes.
And indeed, there was an offer provided to you by the prosecution even before your proffer statement. Were you aware of that?
I'm sorry, say that again?
May I approach a witness here?
Of course.
Proffer letter. I'm sorry, one moment, Your Honor. Is she handcuffed?
I am.
Or are we keeping her handcuffed?
We did yesterday.
She was looking through exhibits.
I was handcuffed in the front yesterday, but today it has to be.
So she can look at exhibits like we did yesterday.
We'll have to bring her downstairs for our policy. We're not allowed to have our weapons on us while we're restraining, so we'd have to go download and then.
All right, let's take about a 10-minute break and do that then. All right, we'll be in recess while we get that taken care of.
All rise for the jury.
Thank you. Please be seated. Right. Counsel, before I step out for a minute while we work on this, anything you need to put on the record?
No, I didn't mean to embarrass Kate during that.
No, I don't think anybody will. I think it's just premise. All right. Just call me when they bring her back and I'll reconvene. We're in recess. Thank you.
All rise.
Zero. You ready to bring the jury out again? Let's bring
Yes,
the jury
Judge.
out.
Check. Yep.
All rise for the jury.
be seated. Mr. Facemire, the witness is yours again.
Thank you, Your Honor. I'll approach the witness, Your Honor.
Of course. You have ongoing permission.
All right. So Kate, I've provided you page 1 of a letter, and at the top of that letter, it says, what? The very top.
Plea offer letter,
Correct. And what's even above that?
Utah County Attorney.
Right. So this is a letter drafted, it appears by the Utah County Attorney, is that right?
Yes,
And it's a plea offer letter to you, right?
correct.
And what's the date of that letter?
May 16th, 2025.
All right, I'd like to offer this as an exhibit, Your Honor,
Any objection?
No objection.
and to publish that to the jury.
What exhibit number is this?
2, I think.
Okay, defense exhibit 2 is received without objection.
Thank you. And as a publisher, Your Honor, I think my witness will have that available to her on screen as well.
Let's give the Switobby's paralegal just a moment.
As they prepare that, I just want to ask a couple questions, if
Of
you're okay.
course.
Excuse me. Kate, do you know what the importance of the date of this letter is? May 16th, 2025?
No, I'm not.
Are you aware, or let me better state, do you recall what your case was doing in and around this time of May 16th, 2025?
I don't recall.
Do you recall coming to court with your attorney and scheduling a preliminary hearing?
I believe I was scheduled for a preliminary hearing.
And do you know when those preliminary hearing dates were?
No, I do not remember.
If I told you that those preliminary hearing dates were May 20th and 22nd, would you have any reason to disagree with that?
No, I would not.
Does that sound right?
Honestly, I don't recall.
Do you recall that we scheduled 2 full days for that preliminary hearing?
I don't recall.
Do you understand what a preliminary hearing is?
I do.
And what's your understanding?
That all the evidence and discovery is presented to the court, and they decide whether or not they have a case against us. Excuse me.
Right. And so at that hearing, evidence would be presented to your honor and not to a jury, right?
Correct?
And the purpose of a preliminary hearing is not to determine guilt or innocence, is it?
Correct?
It's just to determine whether there is sufficient evidence for you to be charged with what you're charged with.
Correct.
And that hearing was coming up on May 20th, right?
Yes.
Thank you. I would ask the court to take judicial notice that there was a preliminary hearing scheduled on May 20th, 2025, scheduled for 2 days in Mr. Restelli's case,
Any objection? to
No
me doing that?
objection.
So noted, thank you.
just so we don't have to worry about that any longer. Are you aware that there was a preliminary hearing that took place in relation to your mom, Tracy, on May 20th?
I'm aware that she had a preliminary trial, yes. I do not remember the day.
Sure. And so this letter, now we have it exhibited before us, was before that date of the prelim, right?
Correct.
And as you see, this letter is an offer for a settlement, right?
Yes.
And is it your understanding when this letter was presented to your attorney, it says, "Dear counsel," that this was in and around the time that you were preparing yourself to cooperate to then tell your story of the events surrounding the death of Matt?
Yes. Excuse me.
Thank you. I don't think that was you, but thank you. And it takes a lot of work for a prosecutor to put on a case for 2 days, right?
Correct.
Object to speculation.
You see a lot of work being done Thank you. I'll accept the objection. You see a lot of work that's being done by the state presenting this case today. Is that right?
I can assume so.
Yeah. They have lots and lots of exhibits.
Yes, they do.
They have a binder full of stuff for people to look at, the jury, myself, yourself, the court, correct?
Yes.
Doesn't take 10 minutes to put this kind of stuff together, does it?
No, it does not.
Right. And so the state made an offer prior to your preliminary hearing and prior to the time that they had to present these exhibits for the preliminary hearing, correct?
Say that one more time.
I can't. I'm sorry.
Oh,
I'm going to have to rephrase it.
okay.
No, and I do think this was asked and answered. She said the date was the 16th. We have an admission that the preliminary hearing was on the 20th.
Do you remember what you did on May 20th?
I was taken to court and I met with Judge Griffin in his chambers and forewent my right to a preliminary hearing.
Thank you. In the law, we call it a waiver. Is it true that on May 20th, you waived your right to a preliminary hearing?
Yes,
And did you waive your right to a preliminary hearing because of this offer that you received from prosecution?
I did.
And you did not have to go through a preliminary hearing and endure the evidence that they were going to present to the court at that time?
No, I did not.
But you did know at that time that you waived your preliminary hearing, the evidence that they were going to present on your case. Is that right?
I was given discovery, yes.
And so you knew the evidence they were going to present at the preliminary hearing.
Not all the audio or picture files, but yes, the discovery.
You certainly were aware that you had taken texts and you had done your texts and you had sent them to Tracy and Tara Lynn and you had taken copies of phone recordings and you knew of that, right?
Yes, I did.
And you knew that the police had that.
Yes, I did.
Yeah. And in this letter, it indicates that you're currently charged with murder, conspiracy to commit murder, obstruction of justice, commission of DV in the presence of a child, counts 4 and 5. A little further down on that page, if we could. And so you were informed that that's where your charges, which you already knew of, correct?
Yes,
And now the agreement by the state on what the plea offer would be, correct?
yes,
Which was murder from a first-degree felony to a second-degree felony, conspiracy to a second-degree felony, which remained, and then felony discharge of a weapon, first-degree felony, right?
correct.
And in May, you knew that you were going to have to provide, in the month of May, a statement to law enforcement and the prosecution to preserve this offer.
Yes,
And you were able to prepare for that, and how did you prepare for that? Did you talk to your attorney?
yes,
And you talked to your attorney so much that he came up with a proffer letter, which is Exhibit 1, right?
yes.
And the proffer letter was drafted on or about June 6th,
Correct.
which we have seen before. And that gave you a couple weeks to speak to your attorney, to get the story of your recollection of the events surrounding the death of Matthew prepared for enough to speak with prosecution, right?
Yes,
So you had a couple weeks between the plea offer, you had a couple weeks between the offer, and then you had 6 days until your actual interview, right?
yes,
And your purpose before May 16th, before your preliminary hearing, you had told your attorney, I want to give the truth.
yes, I did.
I want to have justice for my children and for Matt.
Yes, and his family and his community and everyone involved.
You actually didn't say that at the time. You actually said the truth and justice for Matt and your children, right?
That was my main reason, yeah.
Okay. And so you had a lot of time to prepare and to recall and to remember all of the events surrounding this.
Correct?
And during the interview on June 12th, the prosecution asked you questions.
Yes, I did.
Based on that interview, you ended up entering a plea.
I did.
And in the plea, you pled, as shown here in this report, this letter, to murder and conspiracy and felony discharge, right?
Correct.
And then after the plea, the court set it for sentencing. Is that right?
Yes.
Did you know what the benefit of pleading to these 3 charges would be as opposed to the 5 charges that you were charged with originally?
No.
You didn't.
I knew that some charges were removed. I don't know what every charge carries.
When you pled, were you aware of the benefit of, well, let me ask this question. I would strike that. Did you know that when you were pleading to the 3 charges in this letter that are indicated right there, that you would be going to prison?
Yes, I did.
When you agreed to this, were you in prison?
No, I was not.
You were actually in the Utah County Jail, weren't you?
Yes, I was.
You were in the Utah County Jail for how long? 8 months? 10 months?
11 months.
11 months, thank you. And so in your 11 months, you knew that your time in jail in the county would stop at some point if you took this plea,
Yes.
and that you would be changed to a prison inmate rather than a county inmate. Isn't that right?
Correct.
And that wasn't a real question for you. You knew that was going to be the case if you entered that plea.
Yes, I knew I was going to prison when I got arrested.
And that was my question. My question was, when you entered your plea, you knew that your entry of the plea of those 3 charges would require you to go to prison and not remain in the county jail.
Yes.
And did you know what the time difference between those 5 charges you were charged with and those 3 you were pleading to would be in difference to how many years you'd spend in prison?
As far as I knew, life was always on the table.
So you are under the impression today that you are going to be in prison for the rest of your life.
No, I am not.
So when you just said, I know that life is always on the table, what do you mean by that?
In Utah County Jail, when I was given this letter, I knew that I was going to be charged with this felony discharge of a firearm, and that's a felony 1. And the felony 1s carry a life sentence.
It's a 5 to life, right?
I am not sure of what the parameters are, but I know it carries a life sentence.
It's just life. You'll go to prison for the rest of your life, right?
I
You'll
can
never
assume
get out,
so.
will you?
As far as I'm aware, a life sentence is 35 years.
Oh, who told you that?
Inmate.com.
Who?
Inmates, other inmates, I've heard that they say a life sentence is 35 years.
And that's what your attorney told you too, that you'd spend the rest of your life in prison with this plea, didn't he?
He did not tell me I would spend the rest of my life in prison, no.
Then why are you saying it now?
Because I knew it was on the table. I knew it was an option.
Do you remember testifying at the trial previously with Kevin?
I do.
Do you remember talking about how you knew how many months you actually were going to spend or years you were going to spend based on this plea?
That is a guideline. Yes.
Do you remember saying that?
Yes, it is a guideline.
I'm sorry. The question is, do you remember telling the jury at that trial how many months and or years you presume you'd be spending in prison?
Yes.
Okay. Did you tell that jury that you'd be spending life in prison?
I don't recall whether I told them that or not.
Okay. This will take me some time, Your Honor.
That's fine.
This is a transcript of your testimony at the trial of Kevin Ellis. You understand what I'm saying?
Yes.
Oops. With transcripts at the end, are you aware that the transcriber will put in the words and when they appear in the transcript?
No, I am not aware of that.
Would you like to see it?
If you think it's necessary for me to see it.
Your Honor, at this point, I'm going to object. This is outside the realm of her knowledge of how a transcript works. And there's
I
nothing
think
to
she's already told us that she doesn't know, so I think that's on the record.
And what does that page describe?
W words and Y words.
Right. And so those have numbers next to each word, doesn't it?
Yes, it does.
What do you think those numbers indicate?
You said that it indicates how many times it is said.
If I told you that it indicates the page and line of each page in which that word was said, would you have any reason to disagree with that?
No, I would not.
If I told you that this page under Y has the word years, would you have any reason to disagree with that?
I saw that on the page.
You did. Okay. So now I'm going to go into the years because we seem to have a lack of memory here. And do you know why I'm doing this?
Not a clue.
Because
No.
you said you don't remember telling the jury in the Kevin Ellis case how many years you anticipate staying in prison. You're asserting to this jury that it will be for life.
Actually, Your Honor, maybe we approach.
Of course.
Kate, I'm going to show you a document.
Okay.
You pull up the transfer matrix. Does that look familiar to you?
Yes, it does.
And what does it look like to you?
It is a page from my pre-sentence report.
And when you have this page from your pre-sentence report, what is it indicating?
It is interesting. It
You can
It
do the
is-
whole page.
the criminal homicide matrix.
And when you were sentenced, was this matrix used in your sentencing?
I believe so.
Were you aware at any time before your sentencing that this would be an approximate amount of months and/or years that you would spend in prison?
Yes.
Yes. So you were informed before sentencing that your plea deal would have a matrix that would come out to this amount that's right in front of you, isn't it?
Correct.
And in that box that you see squared off, I would ask for the court to allow this as exhibit number 3, defense number 3,
No objection.
Thank you, so noted in the minute.
and to publish, Your Honor.
We'll publish it.
In the box, on the bottom, there's a squared amount of MOS. What does MOS mean to you?
MOS is indicated for months.
And in your sentencing report, how many months does it say the board would have, how many months does it say is the approximate time that you would spend in prison?
For that one charge, 108 months.
And you have been telling us for your first degree, 5 to life, right?
I believe so.
That is not calculated here. Is that your understanding?
That the life isn't calculated?
That your 5 to life discharge of a firearm, first degree felony, is not calculated here. Is that right?
Not on this page, no.
And where is that calculated?
There's a little box that says active convictions. And then if you go across, it says time, and there's 108 twice, plus 72, for a total of 288 months.
And so is it your understanding that you're going to spend 288 months?
Yes, if the board allows me to be released.
Do you remember saying something completely different to the prior trial?
No, I don't.
Do you remember saying that you would spend about 11 years in prison, but it's up to the board?
That was before I was fully knowledgeable in how the board works.
Do you remember saying that to the jury?
Yes, I do.
But you now, once again, are changing your testimony?
Because I have new knowledge of how the board works, and I have spoken with my case manager in prison.
And you didn't know that at the time that you accepted your plea, did you?
I didn't know what.
Of the new knowledge you now have.
No, I did not know that.
Matter of fact, when you set your plea, you were looking at the 108 months, weren't you? As a guideline for the board to review.
When I set my plea, the guideline was 288, but I knew that life was still on the table. I knew that I could still spend a possibility of life in prison.
Why did you not tell the jury in the Ellis trial that?
Maybe the question wasn't asked in the way that I understood. I'm not sure.
Judge, I'm going to ask that we take a break. I don't want to waste the jury's time watching me look through papers. I'm going to ask that we take a
Let's
break.
take a recess.
All rise for the jury.
Mr. Facemire, did you see maybe your papers on the floor? You might
Yeah,
want
I think. Thank you, Judge.
Thank you. Please be seated. All right, counsel, we'll be in recess until Mr. Facemire. Thank you. Please be seated. Let's go back on the record. The matter of State versus Grist, case number 241101170. Mr. Facemire, are you ready to proceed forward now?
I am, Your Honor.
All right, let's bring out the jury.
All rise for the jury.
Thank you. Please be seated. Mr. Facemire.
Thank you, Your Honor. Kate, is it fair to say that you know more now than you knew 3 months ago about your prison sentence?
Yes.
When were you sentenced?
I don't recall. I don't remember the day.
Do you remember the month?
September.
September.
I believe September.
So you've had an opportunity to be in the prison system for September, October, November, December, January, February, March, April, 8 months, right?
Yes.
You have an opportunity to learn a little bit more about life in prison and about your sentence, right?
Yes.
But there's certain things you know now that you didn't know at the time that you were negotiating for a plea resolution, right?
Correct.
And what I'm asking you is what you knew at the time of negotiating for your plea, did you know and think about your sentence to be? Do you understand that?
Yes.
And although it might be a little different than what you know now, it is certainly relevant to talk about what you thought at the time of not only the negotiation for your plea, but the actual sentence of your plea on the amount of time you would be serving. Do you understand that?
Yes.
In the offer letter, you would get the offer to plead to murder from a first degree to a second degree.
Correct.
And you understood the difference between a second degree and a first degree.
Yes.
Was it explained to you by your attorney?
It was.
A second degree has an indeterminate sentence of 1 to 15 years, whereas a first degree felony, and if it's murder, is 15 or even 20 years to life in prison, right?
Correct.
So you moved from a 20 to life to a 1 to 15 in your indeterminate sentence. You knew that was going to be part of the plea bargain that the government gave to the person who lured Matt to his death, right?
Yes.
And some included that you would plead to some other things, and one of them had to be conspiracy.
Yes.
They're saying that if you want a deal to get the reduction, then you've got to plead to conspiracy too, right?
Correct?
Now, the conspiracy, you understand, he ran all this through your lawyer, right?
Yes.
And he would have provided you good assistance, wouldn't he?
Yes.
And I think he told you, he understood, he answered all your questions, and you thought you understood the legal process and the fact process and the plea bargaining process, right?
Yes.
So with these other offenses, again, they're reduced. Now, the felony of discharge of a weapon, that says felony 1, right?
Correct.
Now, felony 1 is a 5 to life, right?
Correct.
However, there are matrices that give you an idea, at least, of what kind of sentence might result from one kind of plea, right?
Correct.
And in reality, even though that third-degree felony, number 3, first-degree felony, even though it's an F1, 5 to life, your sentencing at the board, the matrix that's going to mostly apply is the second-degree murder, right?
I'm not sure on that fact.
You've got a matrix that applies, and it shows the likely sentence might be from the Board of Pardons at various offense levels, right?
Yes.
So as we have the matrix before us, you can publish that, please. At the time of negotiation, at the time of plea, at the time of sentencing, after discussing matters with your lawyer, matrix, it's working.
It's just slow. It's like
Oh,
turning on the
there it
faucet
came.
to the hose.
After working with your lawyer, what we're talking about in terms of time is if you're down on the matrix, as there being a pre-sentence report, which is prepared, and your lawyer speaking to this, as you indicate, there's a square of 108 months, right?
Yes.
That's because you were allowed to plead to a second degree that resulted in death, right?
Yes.
And you were shown that if you were given a first degree murder, that it's 11 years, that 11 years goes to 240 months, right? Which would be on the matrix to your left of that box. Do you see the 240 months, first degree murder?
I do.
And what is the months in that?
240.
So that matrix gives you an idea, and your lawyer talked to you about this, and it gives you an idea of the difference between murder and a second degree felony that you're allowed to plead to.
Yes.
But there could be a board meeting and a board hearing where the parole board actually varies from one extent to another.
Yes.
And people can come and talk at those hearings and ask that your sentence be longer than 108 months, right?
Yes.
And people can come and say that she did a good job testifying. And as a state of Utah, we think she should get some consideration for that, right?
It's possible.
And they can actually help you out with that for you to get 108 months later. The government can help with that, right?
Yes, if they saw fit.
And so at the time of negotiation, at the time of plea, at the time of sentencing, it was your understanding that you were moving from a murder, 240 months, to a second-degree death, 108 months. Isn't that right?
Yes.
Now, today, you don't agree with that. Is that right?
I'm agreeing.
You are agreeing. And so your board review of 108 months is still standing, isn't it?
I will see the board. I have a tentative board hearing in June of 2036.
2036,
Yes, sir.
which is approximately 108 months.
not sure on the math. It's 10 years from now, 11 years.
120 months would be 10 years, right?
I don't know.
10 times 12, 120,
Sure.
so 120 months.
Mm-hmm.
Is that a yes?
Yes.
Thank you. A lot different than the 240 months if you're convicted of murder.
Correct.
So there is a great advantage to enter into the plea in which you did enter into, isn't there?
Yes, there is.
And you took advantage of that by cooperating to tell the truth, right?
Yes.
It virtually cut your sentence in half, didn't it?
I'm not sure of the math on that.
Well, 240, that's 20 years, right?
If life is still on the table, there's nothing cut in half.
240 is 20 years, right?
Yes.
Thank you. And you said you have a board date in 120, right?
Yes.
And the recommendation on the matrix is 108, right?
Correct.
And you've essentially cut your sentence in half, haven't you, with that plea offer?
On that charge, yes.
Well, on that charge, it's 108, not 120. Says it right there, doesn't it? 108?
I have 2 charges of 108 and 1 charge of 72 months.
And your 2 charges are concurrent with one another, aren't they?
I'm not sure how the concurrent and consecutive work.
If I told you that concurrent means they go as you're sentencing at the exact same time, would you have any reason to disagree with that?
No.
If I told you in your plea statement that you made, it talks about concurrent, meaning the time goes at the exact same time with one another, would you have any reason to disagree with that?
I was under the assumption that 2 run concurrent and 1 runs consecutive.
Do you remember my question?
No.
My question was about concurrent. Do you remember me saying the word consecutive?
No.
Because I didn't. So,
Object argumentative.
I think we're getting a little argumentative, Mr. President.
thank you, Judge. So in your plea statement, it describes the difference between concurrent and consecutive, doesn't it?
Yes, it does.
And in concurrent, it describes your sentence as concurrently would, not does, but would concurrent run together at the same time,
Correct.
right? Which means if you had a 1-year sentence and another 1-year sentence and it was concurrent, you would do 1 year on both charges, correct?
I believe that's how it works.
And in your plea statement, which you signed, didn't you?
Yes, it did.
And you read, didn't you?
Yes, it did.
And it tells you all of this, doesn't it?
I believe so, yes.
Yeah. And then it says consecutive would be 1 sentence, and then when you're done, the other sentence, right?
Yes.
Okay. And on this matrix, it says on your 2nd-degree death, 108 months, right?
Yes.
But you know that consecutive sentencing, you know now that consecutive sentencing has a percentage attached to it, don't you?
I believe so, yes.
And you know that that percentage, even consecutive sentencing, which is one after another, doesn't go the whole term, does it?
I had that explained to me, yes.
Yeah. It just gives a percentage of that term, right?
Right.
Yeah. Do you know what that percentage is?
40%, I believe.
Is that because you read it at the very bottom of these little words right here?
No, I was remembering from my memory.
That's because that's what you've learned since you've been at the prison for a while, right?
No, I remember that from my meeting with my attorney while I was still in Utah County Jail.
And at the time of the trial with Kevin Ellis 2 months ago, you were expecting the 108 months to be a good range of time you would spend, but not a perfect amount of time you'd spend. Isn't that accurate?
Yes.
Thank you. Kate, I want to go back in time a little bit now to June and May of 2025, okay?
Okay.
I'm sorry. I need to take a drink. I apologize, Your Honor.
Oh, take it up there if you want.
I get smart water, it helps. Tracy, at the time you went to speak with the prosecutor,
I'm not Tracy.
sorry, I apologize. I did not mean that intentionally. Kate, at the time that you went to speak with the prosecutor and the investigator, June 12th, were you prepared to tell the truth?
I was.
Do you remember how that event occurred?
Yes.
How did that conversation occur?
I'm not sure what you're asking.
Well, we have this picture. It shows you and Mike Brown. There's Mike in the back of the courtroom. You and Mike Brown on one side of the table, right?
Yes.
And then on the other side of the table is our prosecutor friends and then the investigator, right?
Yes.
And how did that conversation transpire? Did they ask questions or did you just say, hey, I have something to tell you?
I believe they asked questions.
And did you respond to the questions?
To the best of my ability, yes.
Did you respond truthfully?
To the best of my ability, yes.
Did you find that during your questions with them that they were telling you things that they thought were true?
I believe so.
And were you telling them what you knew to be true?
Yes, I was.
And during that conversation with them, did you tell them about whether or not there was a plan to hurt Matt when you left California?
Yes, I did.
And what did you say? Do you recall?
I believe there was no plan to hurt Matt when I left California.
You believe there was no plan. Indeed, you said there wasn't any plan at this point to hurt Matt.
Correct.
So I need to get my dates right. On June 20th, right, there was no plan to hurt Matt.
Correct.
But there had been a conversation about a plan or about hurting Matt previous to that. Is that right?
As a figure of speech, possibly. Yes.
As a joke.
It's a joke until it becomes true.
Didn't you refer to it as a joke?
I thought it was as a figure of speech, yes.
When did you start to realize that there may be a plan to hurt Matt?
About a week and a half after being at my mom's, give or take a couple days.
And what did your mom say?
She said we could get him out here and we could shoot him and have it look like self-defense.
So do you remember in that interview that you actually said, my mom just mentioned ambushing him, like if he came out, like because the state of Utah laws. I don't remember things like that. It's more, it was in passing. It was like she said it as a joke.
If that's what the transcript says, then that's what I said.
Were you telling the truth that day?
To the best of my ability, yes.
Yeah. Did you find that during this interview you started changing your ideas on the events to satisfy the narrative of the investigator?
I don't believe I changed my narrative to satisfy the investigator.
Then why would you say during this first interview, when this is your first chance to just tell the truth, that you said a week after you came that your mom talked about an ambush, but it was in passing and it was like a joke? Were you lying?
No, because, no, I was
Is that
not
the
lying.
truth? Is that the
I remembered a lot even after the interview.
So you're saying what you were saying to the prosecution was not the truth that day?
To the best of my ability, I was trying to recollect the truth.
You said it more than once, that your mom said it in passing as a joke. But like I said, my mom mentioned it in passing as a joke. Are you saying that that's not the case now?
It may have started as a joke, but it ultimately became the plan to murder Matt.
Well, I didn't ask about what it ultimately became. I asked about when you said she first mentioned it a week after you got there, that she said it in passing as a joke.
Yes,
And then you doubled down saying, but like I said, my mom said it in passing as a joke.
What I assumed was a joke, yes.
Were there any details in that first conversation with your mom, or did she just not have any details?
I don't recall.
You don't recall any details about hurting of Matt?
I'm not sure what you're asking.
I asked if you had any details of that first conversation with your mom a week after you got there that you referred to as a joke. Were there any details about how to hurt Matt? What the way to hurt Matt was?
I think it was always shooting him.
Do you recall if that was the conversation in that first conversation you had with your mom about it?
No, I do not recall.
Do you recall testifying to the court today, or not today, yesterday, about the knife?
Yes, I do.
About how your mom showed you the knife?
Yes, I do.
About how you didn't touch it? Your mom showed it to you.
Correct.
It was in a glove or something.
Yes.
In a wicker basket in the laundry room.
Yes, it was.
Do you recall talking about the knife when you were with the prosecution and the investigator on June 12th?
No, I do not.
Do you remember saying that I just grabbed it? And I was like, I don't want to touch it.
I never grabbed it. I went to grab it, and then I thought, oh, I'm not touching that.
Do you recall saying it was a really short conversation? She showed it to me, and I don't know where. There was so much else to the conversation, and then they said, what was your response? And you said, I just grabbed it. And I was like, I don't want to touch it at that point. So here we are, still a week out from coming in. I think so. Do you remember saying that?
I don't remember saying that because I know that for a fact that I never grabbed the knife.
Then why did you lie to the prosecution and to the detectives saying that you grabbed it?
That may be a misprint, honestly, because I never grabbed the knife. I thought about it, and when I went to grab it, I said, nope, I'm not touching that.
So you had the first time about a week after you got to Utah saying that your mom was going to ambush or hurt Matt or something. You said it was a joke. When was the second time?
I don't recall.
When was the next time?
There was many little conversations about it.
Little conversations about it?
Yes.
Like what kind of details?
Like that I needed to say that Matt liked digital camo because the knife was digital camo and Matt owns nothing in camo to make the story plausible.
Are you making this up today?
No, I am not.
When the question was asked, when was the next time that she made a comment to you about hurting or anguishing Matt, do you remember what you said at that June 12th interview?
No, I do not.
When he decided to come out to pick me up. So you said at that initial interview, because you were being honest and you wanted to be honest, didn't you?
I was doing my best to be as honest as possible.
You wanted to be honest, didn't you?
Yes.
And you were doing all you could to be honest with the detective, right?
Yes.
And they asked, when was this next time that she made a comment about it? And you said the day he was coming out. And do you remember what day that was?
What day he came out?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, he was murdered on July 12th.
So the next comment that she made about it was on July 12th, according to your truthful testimony to get the plea agreement, right?
If that's what it says, yes.
And on that day, you told her by text that he's coming out, right?
On July 12th?
Yes.
Yes, I did.
You texted, he's coming to California, he's coming to Utah.
I believe so.
Yeah,
Yes,
we have that as an exhibit, right?
yes,
You've seen that text, right?
yes.
And what did she say?
I don't recall what she said. Should we open the binder?
I think she said, I'll call you.
Okay,
Does that sound familiar?
yes.
Do you remember when you were asked about that with the detective in your interview?
No, I do not.
I told her, I said, Kevin's on his way, and she said, oh, okay. Was this a telephone conversation you had with her after? You told her that Kevin was coming, or Matt was coming?
Yes,
And we've seen the reports of the telephone conversation, right?
yes.
And what did she say when you told her? Did she say, I'm coming home?
On the phone call?
Yeah.
Yes, she said that she was coming home. She was finishing up her appointment that she had, canceling her appointments that she had in the afternoon, and that she'd be home in the early afternoon.
And then you said she seemed ready to do it.
She did.
Why did she say that?
That she seemed ready to murder Matt?
Oh, yeah, why did you say she seemed ready to do it?
Because she seemed ready. She seemed like she was preparing herself mentally to pull the trigger if she had to.
Okay, that's not what you said in the interview. In the interview, you said, because they said, why did she say that? You said, because she was prepping the house. She was putting blankets on the couch. So you talked about a telephone conversation you had with her, and then you automatically revert to many hours later where she's prepping the house. And so you said she seemed ready to do it.
She did.
So why did you say she seemed ready to do it at the telephone conversation?
I don't recall what was said in the telephone conversation
Isn't it true that
per word.
Isn't it true that at this point in your conversation with the detective that they were getting frustrated with your lack of insight to this case?
I cannot speak on how they were feeling.
Didn't you hear them say their frustration with you about lack of insight and being honest during this interview?
I don't recall them voicing their frustration, no.
Did she discuss any other logistics with you that day?
Logistics as far as what?
The killing of Matt?
On how it was going to happen?
The logistics, yeah.
Yes, on who was going to pull the trigger, where Kevin was going to be, where she was planning on being, where Rory and Jacob were going to be, yes. Where my children were supposed to be, yes.
Do you remember what you said to the police officer on June 12th? When asked that exact question?
No, I do not.
Did she discuss any logistics with you? And your response was, I don't think so. Remember saying that?
If that's what it says, then that's what I said.
There wasn't really much like how it was going to happen. Do you remember saying that?
We talked about where Kevin was going to be.
No, you didn't say that. On this day of the interview, you said there wasn't really much like how it was going to happen. She kind of left me in the dark with that. Remember saying that?
I don't remember saying that, but if it's written, it must have come out of my
Do you
mouth.
acknowledge you said that?
Yes,
And this is the day you're there to be as truthful as possible, right?
to the best of my ability, yes.
And this is the day that the prosecution had all your text messages available and they had opportunities to question you about your story on how this homicide of Matt occurred, right?
Correct.
And then right after you said, she left me in the dark, then they asked, like Kevin was going to be downstairs and I was going to be upstairs. Is that what she told you? And you said, yeah. You said she was making preparations. What other preparations? She removed my kids' toy baskets in front of the fireplace. My son steals toys. And so she moved those into the garage so they'd be out of the way. Remember saying that?
Yes.
But she didn't talk to you about what was actually going to happen in relation to his homicide, did she? I mean, you said she left me in the dark on that.
I'm gonna object to vague. Is he asking for what she said then, or is she asking for now?
What she said then.
All right, let's rephrase it so, with it being understood what you said then, I'll let you.
State that one more time, please.
Do you recall on various occasions talking to Matt on his way to Utah?
I do.
And do you recall what you were talking about when he, what to do when he arrived?
I do.
Do you recall asking him multiple times if he was going to come inside?
I do.
Why did you ask him that?
Make sure that he came inside.
Do you remember what you said to the detective or prosecution when you were asked that question?
No, I do not.
Because I wanted to have a conversation with him.
Is that the detective the night of?
Yeah. Do you recall having asking him multiple times if he's going to come inside? Yes, I do. Why did you ask him that? Because I wanted to have a conversation with him. Isn't it true that the first idea of luring Matt to the house through these conversations and these text messages and all of these things came from the detective and prosecution? And that you never had an idea of your luring until they presented that narrative to you?
I knew I was luring him to Utah. I didn't acknowledge it.
You acknowledge it after your plea when you got a reduction in your sentence, though, don't you?
Yes.
And you acknowledge it when you're here today, don't you?
Yes.
But you didn't acknowledge it when you're being as truthful as you could, right?
Yes.
Until it was first presented to you that you were luring Matt to Utah.
Yes.
Did you want Matt to come to Utah?
No, I did not.
So the whole idea of luring him to Utah had nothing to do with any plan. Your plan was to keep him in California and avoid him, right?
I wanted that as an option. Yes.
What was your other option? To murder him?
A peaceful divorce.
Okay, then it wasn't to murder him. It was to keep him in California and a peaceful divorce.
That would have been the happy ending.
What did you think was going to happen when Matt finally said, I'm driving the truck at 250?
I knew what it meant.
What did you think was going to happen when Matt decided to drive to Utah?
I knew it would end in his death.
Really? Do you remember what you said to the detective and the prosecution on the day you were going to be your most honest because you wanted to be honest? Do you remember what you said?
No, I do not remember.
I honestly thought she was going to let me talk to him. Remember saying that?
No, I don't.
Who is the she in that sentence?
Tracy.
Yeah, you thought that Tracy was going to let you talk to him, right?
On some level, I guess. Yes.
Thank you. Because that's what you really thought, didn't you? You thought you would have to have that very, very awkward conversation about divorce, right?
She told me not to come downstairs. She
I'm
told
asking,
me,
I'm asking what you thought. I'm asking what you thought. I honestly thought she was going to let me talk to him. Are you being honest when you're saying that? I mean, you started it with honestly. I mean,
Unfortunately, I don't think I was being 100% honest when I
you
said
weren't.
that. No, I don't think so, because
So-
I know for a fact that she was going to kill him.
So when you went there and spoke to them, you decided you're going to go there and lie to them.
I'm sorry?
When you went and spoke to the prosecution and the detective on June 12th, you decided that you're actually going to go and lie to them.
That wasn't my intention. but
That's what you're
how it
saying
came
right
out.
now. Isn't that what you're saying right now?
Yes, that wasn't my intention, but it's how it came out.
I honestly thought she's going to let me talk to him. And then they said, what do you mean? I didn't think that she would ambush him like that. Is that a lie? Were you lying on June 12th on that one too?
Honestly, I didn't think that she was going to ultimately kill him. I didn't think
Thank
that
you.
she would actually pull the trigger. I asked her not to do it that day, and she told me she was going to do it anyway.
Do you remember my question?
Nope.
Okay, I'll restate my question. Was that a lie? I didn't think that she would ambush him like that. Was that a lie?
Yes.
So you actually went to the state and to the detective to lie.
It wasn't my original intention. It's how it came out. And maybe I was being stupid and trying to protect my mother and my brother
Protect them from what?
from life in prison.
Why? You're going there to testify and to provide them the information of their involvement in the murder. So how are you going there to protect them if your purpose was the opposite? That doesn't make sense, does it?
No, it doesn't. You're
Then
right.
why are you saying that?
Why am I saying what?
That you went there to protect Kevin and your mom?
Because on some level, they are still my family. And as the time has progressed, I have learned things about my mother.
Okay. So let's get back to the question. Why did you go to the prosecutor, to the detective, through your lawyer, through the proffers, to protect your mom and your brother when your purpose was to go there to tell them that you conspired to murder Matt?
Because I wasn't thinking.
Okay. I thought that I would be able to at least talk to him and have a little conversation with him. I'm trying to get to you, Kate, is you're telling the truth here. You actually did think you'd have an opportunity to have a conversation with him, didn't you?
No, I did not.
Okay. Even though you said it 3 times to these detectives, to these prosecutors.
Objection.
I also
Asked
said
and-
it.
Asked and answered
Let's
several
ask
times.
and answer. Let's move on.
However, you had talked to your mom earlier or later that day and asked to not go through with it, didn't you?
I did.
You said that. Told her you didn't want to do it, right?
Yes.
So when you told her you didn't want to do it, you thought you'd be able to have at least a chance to talk to him, have a conversation when you told her, I don't want to do it, right?
I didn't think that I would be able to talk to Matt. Not in person anyway.
Do you remember the question? I mean, I know you want to always answer the way you want to
Objection,
answer.
argumentative.
I think it's argumentative.
Then I'd ask that she be instructed to answer the questions and not to give her narrative of whatever she wants to narrate about.
Ms. Restelli, you need to ask the question that's asked you, not the question you want to answer.
Yes, Your Honor.
So, isn't it true that you wanted to talk to Matt and that's why you said to her, I don't want to go through with it?
No,
Then why did you say it to her?
because I didn't want him to die.
So you didn't want to talk to him, but you didn't want him to die.
Correct.
So you didn't want to have a conspiracy to murder him. You wanted to retreat from that.
Yes.
Thank you. At 9:17, you texted your mom, right?
AM or PM?
AM. July 12th, 9:17, right?
Yes.
And then she said, I'll call you, right?
Yes.
And then at 10:45, so it was like an hour and a half passed away, right?
Okay.
Do you remember that conversation?
Yes, I do.
And what did she say?
I'd have to open the binder.
No, the telephone conversation.
She said she was coming home early. She was canceling her appointments and that she'd be home.
Do you remember saying, she said, don't worry, we'll handle it, just don't worry about it?
Sounds plausible. Sounds like something she would say, yes.
Is it something you said, she said?
Yes.
Yeah. And did you indicate you were troubled and upset because you didn't want him to come out?
I believe so, yes.
And right at that point is when the prosecution and the detectives were just sort of fed up with your lack of accountability, weren't they?
Object to speculation.
Sustained. Argumentative as well.
And right at that point, they said,
I'm going to object to hearsay if he's going to quote something we said at this point.
didn't they say to you, we need you to be truthful?
I believe so,
Why did they say that, do you think?
for that exact reason. They
What-
needed me to be truthful.
Well, you had just spent 11 pages on talking to them. Why are they now saying you need to be truthful?
I don't know.
Well, maybe it's because you said that I
Objection,
only
Your
had...
Honor.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear Ms. Ray.
Objection, he's testifying.
Yeah,
He's speculating as to what her reason is for her answer.
yeah, it's sustained.
Thank you. Do you think they asked you to be truthful because they weren't believing your story?
Quite possibly.
They weren't believing that you said, she said it as a joke?
I'm not sure what they were not believing.
Do you think it's because you said, she said, don't worry about it, it will be okay?
I don't know.
Do you think it's because you said, honestly, I wanted to talk to Matt and I didn't want it to happen?
I don't know.
Do you think that they said that because they had a conspiracy charge and they wanted you to confirm the conspiracy charge?
More than likely.
Yes. And so you started changing your story at that point, didn't you?
I'm not sure.
Including today, changing your statement.
Being more truthful, yes.
And including the day of the Kevin Ellis trial, when the last thing you said on one day was, really didn't talk to Kevin. And then the very next day you said, oh, I had a full conversation in the lawn right after sushi. Right?
Is that a question?
Yes.
Yes.
And when they said to you to be more truthful, they asked, you didn't have a plan in place. Right?
I believe so.
They said, but you had to do something with the plan for him to come out. And you said, right? Do you remember saying that?
Not off the top of my head, but if that's what's in the transcript.
So
yes.
you knew that to be correct. And do you know what you said to that?
No, I do not.
You said, yes. And they wanted, I want to hear it. And you said, yes. Their narrative for you to comply with. Correct?
Yes.
Yes. one point you had to tell them, I'm being honest with you. Remember that?
No, I don't.
I'm being honest with you, and that's what happened. If I told you you said that, do you have any reason to disagree with that?
No.
And then they said, you keep saying I didn't want him to die. And then you said, I didn't. Was that a lie?
No, because I didn't want him to die.
And it was at this point where they used the word lure. Do you remember them using that word with you?
Yes, I do.
And is that when it clicked in your mind that I did engage with him and lured him to the house?
That's a strong possibility.
Do you remember them asking you then, what is your role in this murder of Matt?
I don't recall that, but I'm sure it was asked.
The very end of your interview. And then you offered getting him to come out.
Yes.
And when did you and your co-conspirators decide that was your role? When she first offered the ambush?
More than likely.
That's not true, is it?
What's not true?
Well, you said previously the ambush was a joke. You didn't know what your role was when you said it was a joke? How would you know your role when you said it was a joke? You didn't know when your role is. Do you know what the right answer is? Don't you?
Object is either argumentative or a compound question. I think there were 3 questions in there, but it was definitely argumentative.
I'm going to sustain the objection as to 1 being argumentative and 2 it's a compound question.
You couldn't know your role when you already referred to it as a joke from your mom. Do you agree with that?
No.
You disagree. So you did know your role when it was a joke from your mom.
Yes.
You knew your role a week after you got to Utah when your mom joked about the ambush because your role was to get Matt out, right?
That would have been my role, yes.
Yes.
Because she sure couldn't get him out there.
No. And you did everything you could in those next 2 weeks to get him out, didn't you? You hired him a car, didn't you?
No.
You bought him an airplane ticket, didn't you?
No.
You had his friend's neighbor's sister drive him out for you, didn't you?
No.
Then how would you know your role? When did you know that he was coming to Utah?
On the 12th?
Exactly. You didn't know your role when she first made the joke about an ambush, because the only time you knew of that potential role would have been the 12th, right?
No.
So you did know that you were going to lure him to Utah before the 12th.
In the context of a joke, yes, I would have to lure him out.
So when did you know your role?
I'm not sure.
Isn't it true it was July 12th? That's the only logical answer, isn't it?
That's when it was solidified.
And you talked about it with her, about your role before that.
Yes.
Even though in this interview you said you didn't talk about any logistics.
Yes.
Do you see you're contradicting yourself, Kate?
I understand that.
Here's a second picture. Do you recognize that?
Yes, I do.
And what is that?
That is, I believe, the second interview I had with Detective Nordine.
Same day as your interview, right?
Is it the same day? I know that I had a follow-up interview with Detective Nordine.
consider these to be the same day?
Yes.
And so after you concluded your interview with Detective Nordine and the prosecution, there was a break in the interview, wasn't there?
I believe so.
And then you waited, and then at least Detective Nordine came back in to talk to you again. Do you remember
Yes.
that?
Yes, to ask follow-up questions.
This was after you came to be truthful, right?
Yes,
And after you said your story in the beginning, right?
yes,
And after they then had to remind you, you're here to be truthful, right?
yes,
And then after you said, I'm being honest, right?
yes,
And then you came back for your second batch of conversations. And you started talking about Matt and the things he had done to get better, didn't you?
I don't think I know what you're talking about.
Stop drinking.
Yes, for 2 weeks.
Yeah. So while you were gone, Matt made an attempt to improve himself.
Yes, that's what he claimed.
You just can't say yes, can you?
Nope.
Why?
I don't like this, the.
Being honest?
I do like being honest.
Why don't you just say yes? Why is it hard?
Because I feel like you're not telling the whole truth.
Just reading your words, Kate. Do you believe that?
Yes,
Thank you. And isn't it true when you came back after your round of interview and came back with the detective, you said, like, at this point it was solidified that he was going to be murdered. And they asked what time. And do you remember when that time was?
no, I do not.
You said 2:10. Why would you say 2:10?
I was assuming the time.
I misspoke. You said, like, at this point, it was not solidified that he was going to be murdered. Do you remember saying that?
No, I do not.
And what time was that? And you said 2:10. Do you know what 2:10 was referring to?
No, I do not.
It's referring to July 12th, wasn't it?
If that's what it says.
Well, do you have any reason to disagree with it? Did you say, I was super happy I'd stopped drinking?
I was hopeful, yes.
Did you say, I was super happy that he stopped drinking?
Yes,
Thank you. And were you being honest about that?
yes,
And isn't it true that you said at 2:10 it was not solidified that he was going to be murdered?
yes,
And then a little bit later, you talked to the detective about the hotel money that your mom offered.
I'm sorry?
You talked to the detective about the hotel money your mom offered.
Oh,
Do you remember that?
yes,
And your mom offered to let Matt stay at the house, right?
she told
Is
me.
that a yes?
She told me to tell him, yes,
Yeah, okay. So your mom offered that, right?
yes,
Thank you. Your mom also offered, instead of staying at the house, that she could provide a couple $100 for hotel if needed, right?
yes,
Your mom also indicated she knew he had driven 10 plus hours, right?
yes,
And that if you're leaving right away, There might be a hotel maybe in St. George that she would provide for, right?
Yes.
Your mom knew that he was coming for a long drive, right?
Yes.
And you said, I feel like at this point it was 50-50. Didn't you?
Yes.
So even after the texts about the hotel, after the texts about staying at the night at the house, at that point you're being honest and you still felt like it was 50-50 whether or not he was going to be murdered, right?
Yes.
That means there really isn't an agreement at this point, is there? It was still 50-50.
To my understanding, yes.
Which is quite different than your story earlier in your testimony, that it was always the plan, that it was going to happen, that it's for sure going to happen, but the day you're going to be truthful, until you started getting questioned about your truthfulness and had to come up with an idea of your luring, did you start changing your story to the narrative of the detective? Isn't that true?
Yes.
We ended yesterday's testimony with my question regarding your contact with Kevin. Do you remember that?
Yes.
Excuse me. And the last question, virtually, asked in your testimony, the question was asked, did you have any interactions between him, meaning Kevin, between 3 and 9:30 or 3 o'clock, 3 to 10? And what was your answer? Do you remember?
No.
You said, I don't believe so. So specific question, what was your interaction with Kevin between 2:30 and 9:30 or 3 to 10? And did you have any interactions? You said, I don't believe so. And then that was the end of the day, wasn't it? The end of your testimony that day.
Yes.
Yeah. And then the very next day you came to court, right?
Yes.
And then you came up with a whole new story, didn't you?
Came up with?
Yeah. You testified about a whole new story, didn't you?
I shared new details, yes.
You testified about a whole new story, didn't you?
Objection asked and answered.
I don't think she does answer it, Judge. She gives a narrative, and then I don't know. I lose it on the narrative.
I think she's asked it. Let's move
So
on.
was that a yes, Your Honor? Did she say yes?
That's what I thought she said.
Okay, yes. And the new story that you're saying, your new testimony, is that now you had a meeting in the yard area, front or back, I don't know which, with Tracy, yourself, and Kevin after they get back from sushi, right?
Yes.
Never told that to the prosecutor on June 12th, right?
Right?
Never told it to the prosecutor on your first day of trial, did you?
I don't believe so.
No, you even ended by saying, I didn't have any interaction with him, right?
Yes.
Right. But you got a chance to sleep on it. During your interview, when did you decide that you had a meeting with Tracy and Kevin in the yard after sushi?
I'm not sure I understand the question.
When did you decide you had a meeting with Tracy Kevin, and you after sushi on July 12th, 2024, the day Matt was murdered?
When did I decide? I'm not sure I understand why you're using that question or using that word.
You didn't decide to tell people of it during your interview on June 12th, right?
I'm gonna object as vague. If it's, when did you decide to tell, or when did you decide?
I think you changed your question. Let's rephrase it so we know what you're asking.
Well, I didn't say, when did you decide to tell, Judge, because,
That's vague.
so now I'm going to make some argument. I didn't ask, when did she decide to tell? Because we all know when she decided to tell. It was the next day at court. My question was, when did you decide
When did you decide what?
to tell the story that you said the second day of court?
All right, we'll say that question so it's clear what you're asking.
When did you decide to tell the story about a meeting between you, Tracy, and Kevin in the yard after sushi?
I don't recall.
But you would acknowledge your time and interaction with Kevin was minimal, right?
Yes.
Did you ever have an occasion to talk with your mom about Kevin in March of 2024?
I believe there was text messages about Kevin's mental state.
And was there a conversation about Kevin being one to kill Matt?
Yes.
Was that done jokingly?
I don't believe so.
So you think in March, before Matt even came to Utah, before you even left to go to Utah, before you found out about you're not doing Las Vegas, and right after Disney, you think it was serious?
Yes, I do.
Even though you said it was a joke on June 12th.
Did I say that the March one was a joke?
Well, the question was asked. That's a good question. Even though you're not allowed to ask me questions, but that's a good question. You were asked, what was the context of that conversation? You said, just simply that. It was sad. She was talking about Kevin feeling, how Kevin was feeling, and it was, again, she made it sound like, what do you think I'm going to say?
A joke?
Yes, like a joke. And then, a few seconds later, she's like, well, Kevin's sad, and he'll take care of it if you need him to take care of it. As a joke, right? I mean, it's time to be honest, so.
What she was thinking was probably a joke, but I knew that she was serious, and I know that I shared that information with Tara Lynn, and we both thought it was very sad.
You can't talk for Tara Lynn, Your Honor, and I ask that she not talk for someone else. She can only talk for herself.
That's hearsay. We only talk about you, please. Thank you.
I know when I spoke with Tara Lynn that I thought it was very sad.
And you considered it a joke.
I don't think it was a joke.
Okay. At that time, you were sending texts like, I hate Matt, right?
Yes,
I can't stand having kids with him, right?
I believe is I hate the fact that I have kids with him.
Right.
Yes.
Indeed, the detective said, at this point, do you still think it's a joke? This is June 12th. He's following in on the joke. Or do you think it's getting a little more serious? It's getting a little more serious, you said. So he even asked, do you think it's a joke? And you said, it's getting a little more serious. At this point, so if we're still a week out, what do you know of her conversations with Kevin? And do you remember what you said?
No, I do not.
A week out. I don't know of any conversations with Kevin. Were you lying to him?
I was not a part of any conversations between my mom and Kevin.
Well, you know, a conversation between your mom and Kevin on the day of sushi when you had it in the yard that you decided to drop a bomb during the last trial.
Yes, that is true.
Weren't you just really being honest here when you said that?
In which,
When you said, I don't know of any conversations with Kevin.
no, I don't believe I was being honest.
Your testimony yesterday, you talked about Kevin being downstairs watching video on the couch when all the prep for the murder was to take place, right?
I don't believe that's what I stated,
What did you state?
that he was downstairs on the couch watching movies when Matt was said to arrive, not during the prep of the house.
Do you remember being asked, did Kevin watch Mom make any of the preparations?
No, I don't remember that question.
And do you remember what your response was?
Nope.
I don't believe so. I think he was
Sorry.
still,
I'm just gonna ask for clarification on
I'm sorry?
when that question was being asked.
June 12th, the day she was before the prosecution and the detective, to be honest. You remember that conversation?
No.
You remember that day and that conversation with them, right? Not the
I
specific
remember
one.
having that conversation, yes.
Yes. And you said, I don't believe so. I think he was still upstairs in his room. Did you see Kevin that day? Do you remember what your response was?
My response was no.
Your response was, in passing. Not in the front yard having a conversation about the murder. On the day you're there to be most honest, on the day you're clinching your plea.
You know, I'm gonna
Is that
object
a
to,
question
I'm gonna
or-
ask to
Yes.
strike that.
And that was the day in which you were clinching your plea, wasn't it?
I'm not sure I understand your question.
You were there for the interview based on the information you provided the prosecution to clinch your responsibilities related to your plea, to provide them a statement of the truth.
Yes.
And you said, I saw him in passing. Correct?
Yes.
They followed up with that. How did he seem? So now they want to know. Like, is there anything else that happened on that day? The day Matt's driving out to Utah? You know, we really want to know what's going on that day.
You know, I'm gonna object to that and ask that it be stricken, speculating as to any of our intentions.
I think you need to tone it.
And they said, how did he seem? I'll accept it. And they said, how did he seem? And do you remember what you said?
No.
He seemed fine. Like normal. Like any other day. Do you remember saying that?
No, I don't remember saying that.
Do you agree you said that?
Yes.
He doesn't have kids, so my kids are a lot.
Yes, I remember saying that.
And so he just keeps to himself and just avoids me and my rambunctious kiddos.
Yes.
And then they said, what was his demeanor? Was it different after sushi? So they really get on the line here, don't they?
Yes.
They want to know about after sushi, don't they?
Yes.
Do you know why that's important?
No.
Well, would you acknowledge that this would be your first opportunity to have a face-to-face with your co-conspirator murderers once you find out Matt's on his way? Right?
My first opportunity?
To be face-to-face with your co-conspirators.
Yes.
Because Mom's at work, isn't she? When you found out Matt was coming from California.
Yes.
And so they asked. And then do you remember what your response was when they said, after sushi?
No.
You said, no, I don't think so. His demeanor wasn't different. Did you see him after sushi? Maybe. Isn't it true you said maybe?
If that's what's written, yes.
He seemed fine. Isn't that true?
Yes.
May we approach briefly?
He seemed happy. So, during your interview, June 12th, you voluntarily come forward to be honest. They ask you about after the sushi between Mom and Kevin, and they said, did you see him? And your response was, maybe. Is that accurate?
In what's written, yes.
And what you said,
Yes.
is that accurate? And you also said he seemed fine. Is that accurate?
Yes.
He seemed happy. Is that accurate?
Yes.
Sorry.
All right.
Judge, I just, I'm taking the whole room here, sorry. Well, that's not good. Sorry, Judge, I've misplaced.
Take a moment and just check your notes, you're fine. Ladies and gentlemen, if you want to stand up and stretch a minute while Mr. Facemire is checking his notes, then you're welcome to do that. We won't do a formal recess, because this will just be a minute or two. I didn't say counsel.
Sorry,
You should stand up.
It's gotta be here.
Was it the paper that maybe fell on the floor, Mr. Facemire?
Oh, I actually just had it, and so now I'm confused at my, underneath my pictures. I found it, I'm sorry.
That's all right. A lot of moving pieces, you understand.
There it is. Okay. And then further, there was a lot of questions that the detectives and the prosecution had about Kevin, right?
Yes.
And the reason they had questions about it was because we all know Kevin is the one who shot the gun, right?
Yes.
And so they want to know, obviously, what your communication with Kevin is like. So they asked those questions, didn't they?
Yes.
And they said, tell me everything about that part of it. And do you remember what you responded to by saying?
No.
You said, I didn't talk to Kevin that much. Remember that?
Yes.
And they asked, so anything else that was said about that? And you responded, the conversation between my mom, between Tracy and Kevin, I really don't have much knowledge of.
Correct.
Is it?
Yes.
Well, you certainly had knowledge about some alleged meeting in the yard where Kevin agreed and you had a conversation about it.
Between the three of us.
Yeah. Is there something you didn't know about Kevin as a result of this case?
I had no idea he used cocaine.
Indeed, Kevin was under the influence of cocaine the night of the shooting. Isn't that true? It's
That's-
okay to just give a one-word answer, yes or no.
Yes.
Thank you. And when Kevin came out and shot your husband, the father of your children, He was under the influence of cocaine, wasn't he?
Yes.
Kate, isn't it true that you came to prosecution to be honest?
Yes.
Isn't it true that you were going to present to them your honest statements of what you knew best?
Yes.
Isn't it true that you were going to come to them with your best ability of memory?
Yes.
Isn't it true that in your first interview with the detectives and the prosecution that you gave them your honest answers?
No.
Now you're saying you lied.
I wasn't 100% truthful, correct?
Isn't it true that you came to them and informed them that you didn't have communications with Kevin during that June 12th interview?
I'm sorry, what's the
Isn't
question?
it true? I'll restate.
I'm going to object to asked and answered.
I think it's asking them to.
Isn't it true, Kate, that your versions of the events have constantly changed based on the narrative that the detective was informing you of the conspiracy?
No,
It has not changed?
I don't agree with the word constantly.
Okay. That it is numerous times changed to conform with the narrative of the detective for the conspiracy?
No.
No? Isn't it true that Kevin just decided to remove from your life the hardest part of your life, being Matt, and he came out and shot Matt?
I'm not sure I understand the question that you're saying.
Isn't it true that you built up this fear of Matt amongst your family when you came to Utah?
My family had first experience.
Is that a yes or a no, Nate? Okay,
Yes.
thank you. Isn't it true that Kevin knew you were fearful of Matt?
Yes.
Isn't it true that Kevin felt an obligation to protect you from Matt?
Objection, speculation.
I think it's speculation.
Isn't it true that Kevin sent you a text advising you that he would protect you from Matt?
The word protection was never used.
What did he use?
He said I don't recall the text message, but he said that he could be home.
He could be home. And what did you think that implied?
That he would be there to protect me, not necessarily shoot Matt, but to protect me.
Thank you. And it wouldn't be to shoot Matt because you didn't know that was going to happen, right?
Not in that instance.
No. And that instance, thank you. That instance was when he was in Wendover, right?
I believe that's where he was.
Yeah. And he was in Wendover while you were in Utah.
Yes.
And so when you say not that instance, you're actually contradicting yourself because you say the whole time you were in Utah it was the plan to kill Matt.
No, that's not what I stated.
Okay. And that while he was in Wendover was when you had the conversation about him not using the word protect, but you felt it as being a protection, right?
From day one, he was
Yes.
going to protect me.
That Kevin said, I'll be back in case Matt comes, right?
Yes.
He never had to say that before, did he? You can say no if that's the truth.
On the very first night I got there, Kevin told me that he would sleep on the couch. Because
So Judge, I would ask that you strike this because she is not answering the question.
It's non-responsive. You need to ask the question, answer the question that's asked you. So re-ask the question, please, Mr. Casey.
Your understanding of that text was that Kevin was going to be a protection for you when Matt came to the house.
Yes.
And isn't it true that when he was in Wendover, Matt was not coming back at that time?
Correct.
So your inclination or your statement that him shooting Matt is just not an accurate statement, is it?
I'm not sure I understand your question.
I think it's a poorly phrased question. I'll retract. When Kevin was in Wendover, you were texting with Kevin, and we've seen the texts in this trial, correct?
Yes.
And part of those texts was he offered to bring you weed, didn't he?
I asked him to bring me weed, yes.
So that's a yes?
He didn't offer to bring me weed. I asked him to get it.
Okay. Because at that time, you're still smoking daily?
Yes.
Didn't have your trailer, though, did you?
Nope.
So you're just still a daily smoker?
Yes.
So much so that at one point, Kevin had to send you a text saying, hey, I smell it, right? In the house.
Yes.
Yeah. And isn't it a fact that Kevin was there to be your protector because of the fear of Matt that you presented to your family?
Yes.
You presented it to Tara Lynn. Is that accurate?
Yes.
You presented it to Tracy.
Yes.
Physical fear, right?
Yes.
And you presented it to Kevin.
Yes.
And based on that fear is why Kevin shot and killed Matt. Is that right?
No.
Oh. He didn't do that based on your fear of Matt?
No, he did that on the basis of getting rid of him.
On the basis of what?
Getting rid of him.
Okay. Because a divorce would just be too hard. I guess. Is that your answer?
Yes.
One moment, Your Honor. Okay, I have no further questions.
Thank you. Mr. Brown, I believe you indicated you had some brief redirect.
Yes, Your Honor, briefly.
Thank you.
Stick to you. Okay, thanks.
Okay, you were just talking with the defense attorney about your marijuana usage. Right?
Yes.
You testified yesterday that the marijuana usage caused you memory issues. Is that correct?
Yes.
And did marijuana cause you to make up memories?
I don't know.
Or just make things fuzzy?
It makes things fuzzy.
It doesn't create memories in your mind, does it?
No.
You were also just asked just a second ago, divorce would have been too hard, right?
Yes.
And you were asked extensively yesterday by Mr. Facemire about Tracy's several divorces and how those seemed fine, right? You remember that line of questioning?
Yes.
You talked to a divorce attorney.
Yes, I did.
It wasn't just Google, as you were asked. Google wasn't your lawyer, was he?
No.
You talked to a lawyer.
Yes, I did.
And you told the lawyer about your financial situation, right?
I did.
About your DV conviction, right?
Yes, I did.
About all the concerns that existed, right?
Yes.
And how'd you walk away from that consultation feeling?
Defeated.
Was divorce an option?
In my head, no.
The recording of that call, you sent that to your mother, didn't you?
I did.
I may have misspoke yesterday, so I want to correct this. The recordings of you and Matt on the phone, did you record this with your phone or with your iPad?
With my iPad.
Okay, while you were on the phone with him?
Yes.
Okay, so those recordings would have come from the iPad?
Yes.
Okay, thank you for clarifying that. The defense asked you a question kind of towards the end, that your story has changed several times to conform to the narrative of the detective. I want to break that up. Has your story changed over time?
Yes, it has.
Has it changed to conform to the narrative of the detective?
I don't believe so.
Why has it changed?
Because I've remembered things differently and I want to be more truthful.
Would you agree that in June of 2025, when we first met, would you agree you minimized your involvement in the case?
Yes, I did.
Would you agree you minimized Kevin's involvement?
Yes, I did.
Would you agree you even minimized your mom's involvement?
Yes.
Why?
I believe I was attempting to protect them and not realizing that I was actually hurting myself.
Okay. Would you agree that even up through the first day of Kevin's trial, you minimized Kevin's involvement?
Yes.
Why?
again, I wasn't thinking, and I was trying to protect him.
You feel bad for Kevin?
Yes,
Why?
because he put his life on the line to protect me from what he thought was a threat.
Brother.
Thank you. Any recross? Thank you. All right, Ms. Restelli, you may step down. Counselor, can I see you up
Thank
here
you.
for a moment, please?